Ah, love. It makes fools of us all, doesn't it? But for poor Richard, it made more than a fool out of him. It made him a ghost story. Our dear Richard was just your average lonely heart looking for romance in all the wrong places. And when he laid eyes on a mysterious woman at a bus stop, he thought he'd found the love of his life. Come, join me in this tale I call Deadly Devotion. The late-night air bit at Richard's cheeks as he waited at the bus stop, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. The streets were quiet save for the occasional hum of a passing car. He glanced at his watch. The 9:15 bus was late, as always. That's when he saw her. She stood across the street, the dim glow of the street lamp casting an ethereal light on her pale skin. Her dark hair fell in soft waves, cascading over the shoulders of a crimson coat that seemed almost too vivid for the gray world around her. Richard's breath caught. She was stunning, her beauty almost otherworldly. A first time seeing her. Richard turned. The man sitting on the bench beside him had a gaunt face and weary eyes. He was old, covered by the smell of alcohol and cigarettes, and his clothes gave the impression that he worked as a janitor. He gestured toward the woman. You do well to avoid her. Richard furrowed his brow. What are you talking about? The man shook his head. Just stay away. You'll thank me. Richard brushed off the man's cryptic warning. Instead, he crossed the street, his heart pounding with nerves and excitement. Excuse me, he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman turned slowly, her dark eyes locking onto his. A small smile tugged at her lips, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Hello. Her voice was soft and melodic, but something was unsettling about it. Richard shook off the thought. I see you here often, he said, scratching the back of his neck. I'm Richard. I know, she said simply. The response caught him off guard. And you? No. She tilted her head, the smile still lingering. You come here every evening, don't you? He felt a flush of embarrassment. Was it that obvious? Yeah, I guess I do. And you? Do you take the bus, too? Her gaze lingered on him, unblinking. Something like that. From that day on, Richard was drawn to the bus stop, not for the bus, but for her. She was always in the same crimson coat and under the same street lamp every evening. Their conversations grew longer, though she remained guarded, answering his questions with a distant vagueness. He learned her name was Leela, but little else. You should stop coming here, the gaunt man said one evening, shaking Richard from his reverie. She isn't what you think she is. Richard glared at him. Mind your business. I'm trying to save your life. The man snapped. his voice low but urgent. Richard scoffed. Save me from what? Falling in love. The man's expression darkened. From her. Richard turned away, dismissing the warning as the ramblings of a bitter older man. Richard felt his obsession with Leela grow as the days turned into weeks. Her allure was intoxicating, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed her as much as he needed air. Yet, the unease of those around him began to fester in his mind. Do you ever wonder why no one else talks to her? The gaunt man asked one evening. Why everyone looks at you like you're crazy? Richard rolled his eyes. Maybe because you won't shut up with your nonsense. The man leaned closer, his breath hot and sour. Look around. Look. What do you see? Richard humored him, glancing at the other people waiting for the bus. Some sat silently, their heads bowed. Others stood, shuffling uneasily. All of them avoided looking in Leela's direction. Turning back to the man, he saw him walking down the sidewalk, only to disappear at the next corner. That night, Richard resolved to confront Leela about the growing unease he couldn't ignore. When he arrived at the bus stop, she was waiting, her crimson coat standing out against the blackened night. Leela, he began, his voice faltering. Who are you? Her smile returned, cold and knowing. What do you mean, Richard? You're always here, he said, his words spilling out in a rush. Always in the same place at the same time. People look at me like I'm crazy for even talking to you. What's going on? She stepped closer, the air around her growing colder. Her smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed sharper than they should be. Do you want to know? She asked, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Richard's throat tightened. He nodded. Her eyes darkened, the once beautiful features of her face twisting into something grotesque. I was killed right here, Richard. She hissed. Betrayed by the man I loved. He promised me forever, and he silenced me when I found out his lies. Now I roam this place, waiting for fools like you. Richard stumbled back, his heart hammering in his chest. You're lying, he stammered. Her laugh was cold and hollow. Am I? You're no different from the others. You came here, night after night, thinking you could have me. But now, you'll join them. The world around him seemed to blur as shadows writhed and twisted, taking on forms too horrible to comprehend. Leela's face split into a ghastly grin as spectral hands reached out from the darkness, clawing at him. No. He screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the night. Everyone around looked the other way. No one acknowledged what was happening. The following day, the bus stop was quiet. Commuters shuffled to their usual spots, but none lingered where a crimson coat lay draped over the bench, stained with blood. As night arrived, the gaunt man noticed Richard's absent and Leela standing where she would always be, shaking his head. He already knew. Another one, he muttered. They never listen. The 9:15 bus pulled up, and those who knew ignored the figure standing beneath the street lamp, her dark hair cascading over a crimson coat. She smiled, waiting for the next fool to arrive. Well, It looks like Richard's love life hit a dead end. He should have taken the hint when people warned him to stay away. But love makes you blind, and in Richard's case, it also made him breathless. So the next time you feel yourself falling head over heels, remember, some loves are to die for. If you enjoy this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell. That way you won't miss the next one.